I hadn't planned on going to that dinner. When my sister texted in the family group chat, the invitation didn't even feel like an invitation. It was more like a performance announcement, the kind where everyone is expected to show up and play their assigned role. She wrote, "Dinner tonight. Formal place. Be on time." No smiley, no warmth, just authority. That was typical of her. Ever since she married into money, everything became a stage and everyone else became background noise. I almost said no. After a 10-hour shift on my feet, the last thing I wanted was to sit across from people who had perfected the art of smiling while cutting you down. But my mother called a few minutes later, her voice already rehearsed. "You should come," she said. "Family should be together." That sentence had always meant the same thing: don't embarrass us by being absent. So I went home, showered quickly, and put on the simplest dress I owned. Nothing fancy. Clean, professional, neutral. I tied my hair back the way I always did for work, muscle memory taking over. I didn't notice how tired I looked until I caught my reflection in the mirror. I told myself it didn't matter. It never mattered to them anyway. The restaurant was one of those places with low lighting and quiet confidence. White tablecloths. Servers who moved like shadows. When I walked in, I immediately felt out of place, not because I didn't belong there, but because I knew I'd be treated like I didn't. My sister was already seated, laughing loudly, one manicured hand resting on her husband's arm. He looked polished, calm, observant. I'd met him a few times before, but we'd never really spoken. As soon as my sister saw me, her smile shifted. Not disappeared. Shifted. The way a smile does when it's about to be used as a weapon. "There you are," she said, eyes flicking over my outfit. "You're late." "I'm not," I replied calmly, checking my phone. "I'm right on time." She waved her hand dismissively. "Well, sit. Don't stand there like you're working." That was the first jab of the night. Small. Precise. Designed to land without drawing blood. I sat down. The table fell into an awkward rhythm. My parents asked my sister about her recent vacation. My brother talked about his promotion. No one asked me anything. I was used to that. Silence had been my seat at the table for years. Then the waiter came to take orders. Before I could even open my mouth, my sister laughed. Loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Oh, relax," she said, rolling her eyes. "She's just a waitress. Don't expect much." The words landed heavy. Not because they were false, but because of how proudly she said them. Like it was a verdict. Like it explained everything about me. My mother smiled weakly. My father cleared his throat and looked down at the menu. My brother smirked into his glass. No one defended me. No one corrected her. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. Years ago, I learned that silence unsettles people more than protest. I simply looked at my sister and nodded once. "Okay," I said. She blinked, clearly disappointed that I hadn't given her the reaction she wanted. Her husband, though, was watching me. Not with amusement, with curiosity. Dinner continued. Conversation flowed around me, never toward me. My sister told a story about how exhausting it was to manage people who worked for her. She laughed when she said it, glancing at me each time. I listened. I remembered every word. Halfway through the meal, her husband excused himself to take a call. When he stood, his chair brushed against mine. He paused. "Long day?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I replied. He nodded, like that answer meant something, then walked away. When he returned a few minutes later, something had changed. His posture was straighter. His expression sharper. He sat down slowly and looked around the table, then directly at my sister. "You said she's a waitress," he said casually. My sister smiled proudly. "Yes. Why?" He picked up his glass, took a sip, then said the words that would split the night clean in half. "Funny," he said. She approved my raise last week. The table went silent. Not awkward silent, shocked silent. Every face turned toward me. My sister laughed nervously. That's not funny. I'm not joking, her husband replied. He turned to me. You didn't mention we were family. I met his eyes. You didn't ask. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. My sister's smile collapsed in real time. What is he talking about? She demanded. I didn't answer. Her husband did. She's not just a waitress, he said calmly. She's the regional operations director who signed off on my promotion. And if I'm correct, he checked his phone. She oversees 3 departments that keep my company alive. No one spoke. My sister's face drained of color. I sat there, hands folded, heart steady. I had known this moment would come eventually. I just hadn't expected it to arrive between appetizers and dessert. And that was only the beginning. The silence didn't break on its own. It shattered. My sister was the first to move. She laughed again, but this time it sounded brittle, forced, like glass about to crack. That's not possible, she said, shaking her head. You're confusing her with someone else. Her husband didn't look at her. He was still looking at me. I'm not, he said calmly. I know exactly who approved my performance review and raise. I had 3 meetings with her team. She signed the final authorization herself. My mother leaned forward, voice low and sharp. What kind of job is this? She asked me, as if I had tricked them somehow. Why didn't you tell us? I finally spoke, my voice steady. You never asked. That answer hit harder than shouting ever could. My father straightened in his chair, pride and irritation colliding in his eyes. So what is it you do, exactly? He asked. I exhaled slowly. I manage operations across multiple regions. Staffing. Compliance. Performance audits. The things that keep companies from bleeding money without knowing why. My sister stared at me like the ground had shifted under her feet. Since when? Since 5 years ago, I replied. Around the time you stopped asking. Her husband leaned back, arms crossed. She's being modest, he added. Her department flagged inefficiencies in our logistics chain that saved us 7 figures last quarter. 7 figures. The word hung in the air like smoke. My brother's smirk vanished. My mother pressed her lips together. My father looked away, suddenly fascinated by the tablecloth. My sister snapped out of her shock and did what she always did when cornered, she attacked. If you're so successful, she said, voice rising, why do you still dress like that? Why do you still act like you're struggling? I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Because I like my life quiet, I said. And because every time I tried to share anything, you all laughed it off. That's not fair, my mother said quickly. It's accurate, I replied. Her husband cleared his throat. Actually, he said, turning to my sister, you told me once that your sibling never amounted to much. My sister's mouth opened, then closed. He continued, voice still controlled but firmer now. You said she worked service jobs and needed help. You implied she was dependent. I looked down at my folded hands. I didn't need to see her face to know what it looked like. That's not what I meant, my sister said weakly. But that's what you said, he replied. The waiter returned, unaware he was stepping into a battlefield. He placed dessert menus on the table, glanced at the tension, and retreated quickly. My father finally spoke. Why didn't you correct us, he asked me. Why let us think? Think what? I interrupted gently. That I was less than you? He didn't answer. My sister suddenly stood up. This is humiliating, she said, voice sharp. You planned this. I shook my head. I didn't plan anything. I just showed up. Her husband stood as well. Sit down, he said quietly. She froze. I've defended you for years, he continued. I believed you. Tonight I realized you built your confidence by standing on someone else. That did it. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were furious ones. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We're leaving. He didn't move. No, he said. You are. The table went completely still. He turned to me. I'm sorry, he said. For believing the story instead of meeting the person. I nodded once. Thank you. My sister grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels striking the floor like punctuation marks. The restaurant doors closed behind her with a final, satisfying thud. My mother looked between us, panicked. This family is falling apart, she whispered. No, I said calmly. It's just being honest for the first time. My father sighed deeply. We didn't know, he said. You chose not to, I replied. Dessert was cancelled. The dinner ended early. We stood awkwardly outside the restaurant, the night air cool and unforgiving. My sister's husband stayed back with me while the rest of the family waited by the car. There's something else, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. She applied for a position in my division, he continued. She wanted me to fast-track it. I felt a flicker of recognition. And now, he said, meeting my eyes, I can't unsee what I saw tonight. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply said, do what you think is right. He nodded. That night, I went home alone. No dramatic exit. No applause. Just silence. But something had shifted. By morning, the consequences would start rolling in. The fallout didn't come loudly. It came quietly, the way real consequences always do. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. One message. From my sister. You ruined my marriage. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone down without replying. An hour later, another message followed. They're asking questions at his office. He says he can't protect me anymore. That one almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. By noon, my mother called. Her voice was softer than usual, careful, like she was stepping on glass. Your sister is not doing well, she said. I'm sure, I replied calmly. She says you embarrassed her on purpose. I existed, I said. That's all. There was a long pause. Then my mother asked the question she should have asked years ago. Are you really doing that well? I leaned back in my chair, looking around my apartment clean, quiet, earned. Yes, I said. I always have been. That afternoon, the confirmation came. My sister's husband didn't say much. Just one short message. I withdrew my recommendation. HR found other issues. She won't be joining. No drama. No shouting. Just reality catching up. By evening, my father showed up at my door. No warning. No phone call. He looked older than I remembered. I didn't raise you to be invisible, he said. I opened the door wider. But you did let me become that. He nodded slowly. We believed the loudest voice in the room. That was never me, I said. He looked down. It should have been. Weeks passed. Family dinners stopped, including insults. Conversations became cautious, respectful. My sister avoided me entirely. When we did cross paths, she looked through me like I was a mirror she didn't want to face. And me? I didn't change my job. I didn't change my clothes. I didn't change my life, because I never needed to. What changed was how people spoke when my name came up, how they paused, how they chose their words more carefully. I learned something important from all of it. People don't fear confidence. They fear quiet competence. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that doesn't beg to be seen. The kind that waits and lets the truth speak when it matters. At the next family gathering, months later, no one joked. No one laughed. No one called me just anything. And my sister? She stayed silent. Because by then, everyone knew. The waitress they mocked was the woman they underestimated. And that mistake cost them far more than respect.